Hello and good evening, or end of the afternoon, depend where. And today we'll play a few puzzles. We'll be checkmate in 3 moves, and this one is the puzzle we finished last time. So I simply give you the solution of this one and let's go on. I remind you that you can type the solution you think in the chat during the timer, and even after if you want to change your mind. So the solution here was rook takes cannon, and then was to sacrifice the rook because the guard is pinned between the defense, so king takes and then rook checkmate. So that was the solution of the last puzzle from last time, and right now let's go for the new puzzles. Alright, so here first thing to notice is that the king is very safe, and in terms of influences to defend, the king has only the guards and also that rook that is right now protecting Dick's pawn, but this rook won't enter the game. And in terms of attacks, we have a knight, we have a pawn defending, we have a pawn here, we have a rook entering, and also, not to forget, we have that cannon that may provide a check here, and that will be interesting. So I will begin to develop the solution 8403, so that's knight check, and right now the solution was to bring, and we have only one way to check, and it's by bringing the pawn. That's the best solution, check, and right now here we can checkmate. So that's a working solution, because if the king had gone here, then I try to show you. The king could go here, but in that case that's take, and there is two solutions here. If king takes, then rook checkmate because the knights cover the center, or if king here, then that's cannon checkmate because that square and that square are taken by the pawns. So finding the solution with the knight is very good. That was not the easiest one. What else do we have? Cannon check suggested, but the problem is that the king is able to go to that spot. So once the king is here, there is only two ways to check. That's rook take guard or pawn here. And if pawn here, king takes, and then we need to find a checkmate in one move, and that's not possible because the pawn here is protected by a guard. So using the cannon is a good idea, but before we should ensure that actually elephant there was pawn takes, and elephant here was not check because there is a pawn here. I can show you again if you want. Yeah, and there is also the king opposition event. Take care. So the problem on cannon there is that the king may go here. So before that, if we bring that pawn, we kind of sacrifice it, but now the rook is gaining influence there. So right now that's cannon check, and there is only two possibilities, king here or king there. In one case that's rook takes checkmate, and in the other case, let me show you, that's take, if king here, then it's check and checkmate, just to show you the variation. And if king here, then since the knight covers, that's pawn takes checkmate. So those are all the variation. And the idea with the cannon is to get the rook to control d square before bringing the cannon in the game, because otherwise there's no way to conclude after. So there was a lot of variation in that one, and let's go to the next one. Yeah, plus 73, 76. I don't see so much solutions. 93, 94. Not sure about 93, 94, but of course the first move will be rook takes. We all agree on that. And here, the second move. Maybe. Sorry, I missed the cannon at that spot. So, yeah, 93, 94. Okay, well done. Because there is the cannon, and then if king takes, then pawn here, and that's checkmate because the king is blocks considering his own pawns. And in that way, the way to checkmate is simply to use the rook as a back rank checkmate. So well done for finding that. And what else do we have? If we try to join with the pawn, that's not working because there is the cannon, and then there is the rook, and there's no way to checkmate here. Yeah, but that's good to provide it in the chat. I simply forgot that cannon there. So well done. That was a puzzle with way less variation than the previous one. And we are going to the next one. So even if it's possible only to write the first move, try to think about the whole combination, because that's the idea. Yep. Sorry. I pressed next puzzle. But are you sure that's checkmate in that case? Yeah, because the cannon is using the pawn for support. So the idea is good, but maybe there is a move that will be preventing that before. Yeah, exactly, because the cannon is using the support to block the middle, and we just think that if we bring the rook there, that's checkmate. Okay, there's an elephant that that may join here, but still. So if rook takes, then elephant, and now pawn, and the pawn, since the pawn is out, that's not checkmate anymore. So the idea is to remove the fact that the pawn could be brought here, and at the same time keep the support for the cannon, and we can achieve that with the knight. And right now we simply bring the rook, the elephant, and that's checkmate. So when you have an idea like that, you see, try to really consider it and consider what other piece, so that you will find another idea that's a bit more evoluted, but that will bring to the solution. And yeah, with time you get it. So let's go to the next one, and here the king is very safe. Okay, that one is not very interesting. Yeah, so I will a bit. You simply need to count that there is 1, 2, 3, and 4 defenses there, and then there's only 1, 2, 3 threats. So the cannon is blocking, so whatever is here it will checkmate because it controls the squares. So we simply bring everything, and that's okay because the elephant covers in the end. The other variation was simply go with that pawn. Yep, sorry, that's the same. Check and checkmate. So simply we need to know how to count, and don't forget that the elephant here is threatening, but there wasn't specific variation here. So not the most interesting problem. Pawn here is not working at all. What do you mean 5 defenses? 1, 2, 3. Sorry, 2, 3. Second rook is also on the file. Oh yeah, I completely forgot that one. Yeah, that's that's a lot for one. So let's go to the new one. There's a lot of red pieces here. Okay, not so easy to find. Alright, so here there's not so much pieces that can check. That's one solution, that's a second one, and that's a third one. And that could be also one, but king takes and there's nothing there. So what is important to notice, and that will be the key for winning, is that this cannon here may thread the rook and get something. So if we go with the pawn, that's pawn check, there is one move possible, and then that's where the idea comes. It's to take and check, and now we will simply use that rook to checkmate like this, for example, wherever it is. And we count on the fact that the pawns here is blocking the middle. So that works because of the cannon and the rook. The other solution, I'm not sure it works. I wanted to try it. Yeah, not working because simply bring the guard, and here there's no way to counter that. So maybe cannon check, and no. So the only solution was pawn there to force the back row, and then checkmate, because nothing can be put here. Alright. And here maybe we have to pay attention to the king opposition. Okay. Hello, Jazzy. So what do we have here? We have a lot of pieces that may bring some pressure to those square, and also we have this pawn that is blocking the king. There is no way to, in that position, that's good if we could bring something here to checkmate, because the king cannot flee anywhere else, but since the rook is there, we won't be able to find a way. Like, cannon check is not a solution at all, that's checkmate here. So the idea is to control all those three squares, and that's possible by, for example, bringing the pawn, check, bringing the pawn, check again, one square, and simply now bringing the rook, checkmate, using all those. The other solution is kind of the same, but that's like playing with the rook and concluding with the pawn. And that's the only idea to solve that puzzle, is to notice the majority of piece attacking and simply controlling the three squares, since there is nowhere else to go. Alright, so what do we have here? We have a cannon at the center of the fortress and a lot of material for red to attack in that way. And what are the solutions suggested? It's to take this pawn, because there is a lot of material there, and there was two solutions. The first solution was king here, but simply pawn here, and that would checkmate because the rook controls back. So the best move is cannon takes, but on that issue the rook are able to block and checkmate. And there was also 87, 86 that was suggested, so that pawn takes quad. That's kind of forcing the take, but I'm not sure there is any checkmate in that position, because if rook check, then rook comes back, and if rook checks here, then the elephant may join, and rook check here, the knight takes. So even when we take, if the king goes here, there's no way to check and the king will be safe. We could check with by taking, but that won't be a solution. So the only solution working was pawn takes. If we try to take with the rook, the problem is that the king may go to the center after. So I show you one more time. Rook takes, now cannon takes, rook takes, and then checkmate here. And that's all for this one. And again, a very empty fortress for blue and a lot of rooks to play with. for red. Yeah, everyone found it, plus 92, 93. I won't wait the timer to end because there's no so much solution. Take two solution here. If cannon takes, then rook takes check, and whatever happens, we bring a rook in the middle because there's nothing to attack and there's no way to defend, and that's checkmate. So the other solution is to go back here, but there is 0 square, so we simply need to check, and the elephant comes by, and then we conclude with the rook here. So not so much solution there. Rook here doesn't make sense, and that's because pawn there doesn't make sense because of the cannon, and the knight is not able to reach the game. So the only solution is to bring something, and we can also do this variation. Oh no, doesn't work. I thought he has to take with the elephant and then we could checkmate, but there was a rook there. So yeah, that's all for this one. This one may require a bit more calculation. Okay. $98. That's okay. So two solutions here plus 85, 84. Yeah. So 85, 84. That's a way to do check with the cannon. And here the problem is that there could be a checkmate if rook takes, because if rook takes then knight check. The king was here, it has to go here, and we simply conclude with the pawn checkmate, and the pawn is covered by the knight. But here we need to find a way to check, and there's only one, that's to move the pawn so that the elephant may check. And we have two choices here, check, and here we need a way to find a checkmate in one move, and I don't think that's possible because if we go back here that can be took. So the problem of the bringing the pawn for the cannon to check is that if the king flees here, there's no way to conclude. So we could also think to check with the knight, but that's the same problem here, and there's no way to conclude. So it's actually different if we bring this knight, because if this knight leaves the square, then a pawn may go here. So knight check, and here if the king had gone there, then we could checkmate with the pawn, and that's what will actually happen, because after a knight takes rook check, then the king has only 2 squares, but if he goes there, then checkmate. What if check, check, check. What if the king goes here? How to find the checkmate in one? Because if we bring the pawn here, then the king can go to that square, and that's not checkmate. So we have to notice that this square is controlled, so the king is locked on this file, and we simply use the cannon to jump back, because since there's nothing that can be brought or removed here to protect, then that's checkmate. So those were the 2 solutions. If the king here goes there, that's checkmate, and if the king here goes there, that's checkmate this way. Yeah, actually that's the solution. But there was another solution that was a bit of a trap, because it doesn't work. The idea was to take the pawn here, and then there's the cannon in the middle of the fortress, which is very bad, and simply bring the rook, and that would kind of checkmate. But the problem is that when the cannon comes back, it's now threatening check, and that kind of breaks the idea to bring the rook here, because we are check, and the only way to prevent is to take, and here there's no way to checkmate in one move. So the other weakness is this square, because the elephant is actually aiming here. So check, and right now there's only one move to bring the guard. This pawn is doing a very good job preventing the king from going somewhere else, and we simply can take with the pawn and then with the rook, because it's protected by the elephant, or if you prefer, with the rook before and the pawn after, and that works still because of the elephant. So that was the solution, and the idea what wasn't working is to bring the cannon in the middle of the fortress, because that's check. Important to notice. everyone went for the same idea, because if we pay a closer look, we can see that the cannon is already providing check, and there's only one way to prevent that rook takes. Otherwise, we could have simply rook checkmate, and that's probably how it will end. So rook takes. Now if king takes, simply bringing the pawn, the king is back in the center, we are not checked, and those two squares are blocked. So checkmate here because the pawn protects. And what do we have? If you went with the guard, that would have directly blocked those two squares with the king in the center, so rook checkmate would have walked directly. I show you again, maybe there's another solution. No. Bringing the guard, the king is back to the center, and the pawn is providing support for the rook. So about the notation system, it records the last move you play, writing a plus just before. So if you want to talk about the secondary moves, simply write the move without the plus sign. Otherwise, it will count your move with the plus as the last one. And here, or8, or4 is not the first move to play. It's the second one. Alright, so what do we have here? Not very subtle one. So there is different moves there, but the idea is every time the same. The same is to notice that there is 1, 2 attacks here, 1, 2 defense there. So we need to bring more attack here, and the way to do that is to use the diagonal mobility of the pawn. So we can simply dig in with the pawn and then go with the rook, and then rook checkmate simply. So that's mainly the idea. We can go with this pawn before the pawn and then the rook, and we can even kind of early sacrifice the rook and then conclude like this. Those are every time the same idea, but the order is different. There is some combination where the order doesn't matter, and there is some where the order matter, but here there's no big deal because there's nothing to do for blue. Okay, this one is a bit more subtle. Alright, so this one a bit more complicated. There is a lot to consider. We can think about those cannons already, and we can see that there is a cannon in the center, which is quite a weak situation, and we want to have some play with the rook. What we could think about maybe, so 44, 84, that's kind of sacrificing the cannon to bring the king in the center, but the problem there is that if we bring something here, the cannon can simply take it, and we won't be able to achieve an... oh no, we can rook check and rook checkmate. So yeah, I haven't saw that solution before, but the idea is to lure the king in the center so that it's blocked by its own cannon. So that's a nice solution here. Take, and there is only one move, and that's checkmate. The other solution was to check here, kind of exchanging the rook, check, and right now, since the rook covers here and the king is blocked, we simply need to provide check, and that's possible because of the knight here. And the last solution, if the king decides not to take the rook, but simply to flee directly, is to bring the rook there, because there's no way to go, so rook there and then checkmate. That was the last solution for the first variation, but that's I like that solution. That's very elegant. And checkmate. Well, so in those situations, after having checked that the king is safe, you can see that there is a rook that is hanging, and the rook is basically the only defense in the fortress, so without so much question, simply take the rook, that's check, and there's nothing. And here we need to try to find a checkmate in 2 moves, so the idea is to notice that the cannon there is threatened twice. So activate the rook to control the squares, and they're finished like this. I was thinking about this one, but I haven't found solution, because on here that doesn't work because the elephant is there, and that would have been checkmate in 4. So I have tried to see this one, but I wasn't able to figure a solution, and I don't think that actually there is one. 07, 74, 94, 74, 84, yeah. But since the cannon is not protected, that's not good, and here the rook takes 07, 06. Yeah, but king takes, and that's not checkmate. But yeah, the easier solution was simply to take. No, not checkmate in with that solution. But thanks for checking. Alright. Yeah, I wasn't finding the checkmate in 3 with 2808, but in 5 that may be the case. So here, as we can see, there's like not so much defense for blue. The only defenses are the knight and the cannon, and we can simply bring the rook there. That's to double the column so that we have a support. Check and checkmate. That's one way to do it. We can also check here and checkmate because there's like no defenses at all, and we can even check there and checkmate here. So that's for the checkmate in 3 easier solution. However, we have here a cannon and also one cannon, and what if we bring the cannon there to check? That's check. The knight goes here. Check, not really worth it. Sorry. Check, check, and checkmate, but that's a lot of moves. Maybe, sorry, there was something better on check, king to the center. We cannot really bring the rook here because of the cannon, so yeah, there's not so much possibilities to check here. That will be with the rook. So that's like, and what if this cannon, that's not really changing the issue. So yeah, the solution was to go here with the rook. Boom. Alright, so little trick here in that position. We could think that rook takes, quad takes, and directly rook checkmate works, but there is a thing to notice is that our king is already checked, and therefore we need a solution to prevent that check. But we can see on our way that the elephant here is threatening to check if the rook moves, so the idea will be to bring the rook so that the check is prevented, and then check the king with the elephant, and knight takes elephant. That's a solution, and right now we need to find a checkmate in 2 moves. So the idea will be to force the king to go here, because since we have the cannon and already some protection there, we will be able to quickly achieve checkmate. And if we bring the rook here, that won't work because there's an elephant, so the idea will be to bring the pawn, because that square is controlled by the rook, and here we can checkmate because that's a double check and protected by this rook here. So yeah, sorry, 49, 59, 49, 59. But if we take directly and conclude, yeah, that's the same idea in the opposite side. To give a protection for that pawn, sorry, for this pawn, and now the king is blocked. Alright, so pay attention when the king is checked and try to see basically if you find like a checkmate in 1 or 2 moves and it should be in 3, then you may have missed a threat of king opposition or check on your own king. And that's puzzle 37, so we'll play only 3 more. We'll stop at puzzle 40. Okay, so seems like everyone found it directly. We have a cannon there, and we have also a cannon here that is kind of pinning, and the knight and the guard. So if we takes, the pawn cannot be taken back, so the king has to flee, and the king is now blocked by the rook, can't go up. So we bring the pawn again, and right now we have the support with the cannon, and that's checkmate. That was the only way to provide check at the first move, so no big deal. And after that there is like nothing, the cannon can't be here or here to check, and the pawn cannot come back, so the rook would check. So there is only this idea, and that's a problem where the solution is kind of direct because there's no other way. You're kind of forced to solve the problem. There's no way to fail check. And let's go for puzzle 38. And a cannon in the center that may give us some ideas. Okay, maybe a little more tricky than it appears. Alright, so as I said before, there is a big weakness because of the cannon in the center, and that's what will give us idea. Of course, our king is protected and has no check and no rush for that. So if we are able to control this row, then the game is over. But the problem is that if the king takes the elephant, we won't be able to check on the file because the cannon may take whatever checks. So we need to find a way to bring the king to a corner and then bring a rook. And if, for example, we check here, that was suggested 64, 66, then king takes elephant, and here we have no way to continue the combination. But there is something slightly different, is that if we take with that rook, then we may have something, and the idea here is to simply sacrifice the rook so that the king goes back there, and right now we can control the rook and conclude because the elephant and the cannon are very blocky. And so 76, sorry, let me show you. We could also think about bringing the knight check, and that would be checkmate because we were able to bring the two rooks here. Uh, 56. So yeah, this one was a bit more tricky, because here if you take with this rook, then there's no way to conclude directly, but you can also sacrifice, but that's a checkmate in 4 move and not 3 moves. So yeah, rook check, king takes, sacrifice to bring back the king to the corner and use the weaknesses. Because when there is no guards and only far range pieces in the fortress like cannons and elephants, it's easy to sneak a rook. Yeah, that was all for this one. 39, only one more after this one. Yeah, this one simply one solution. That's pawn check, and here we will study the two variation because the king could have gone here also. But in that case, simply pawn takes, the king has to come back, and now that square is blocked, so we conclude with the rook and that checkmate. And the other solution is the same idea. Those squares are blocked by the own piece or other threat, so simply rook, and that's directly checkmate. So check, 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 the king is blocked by the rook, and that's a kind of row checkmate. And the last one for today. Alright, big threats here, a lot of threats for red, because we have a rook and a pawn on that guard, and we are also that sneaky elephant that may provide a discovery check if the rook moves. So I will study the solution. 87, 85, that's bringing the rook here to pin this one and to use the elephant check, and pawn takes elephant seems reasonable. And here we need to find a way to conclude and in two moves, and we can simply rook check since the rook cannot take because it's pinned, and then that doesn't work because our king is threatened. So sorry, pawn takes, now there's no cannon check, and we can conclude by checkmate here. So mind the details. What else do we have? We have 06, 07, 07, 06. So that's directly taking that pawn, and that's here taken with the cannon. And we can simply do the same, check with the elephant and checkmate. And can we find something else? Yeah, no. Or rook here, check, check taking, and here we can checkmate using the diagonal. And what else? Plus 9404. So taking the cannon was suggested, and in that case we bring the rook, because if the rook goes there to defense, then we can bring that. And here 44, 27. Oh, 44, 27. That was also an elephant check. And is there a way to checkmate in one move? I'm not sure, because we cannot double check with the discovery. Of course we can check like this and checkmate here, but that's in 4 move, so I don't think that there is enough tempo to do that. No, that's not working yet. So yeah, plenty of solutions, and I will conclude with this one. Take, and if cannon takes, then checkmate here. So thank you for following that. Next week, same timing, we'll play again 20 puzzle, 20 checkmate in 3, and since then take care. And I also play next Friday, so have a nice end of evening, or a good night if you are in Korea. See you!